Welcome back to the Best Ball Boardroom, where we're holding our weekly meetings with some of the top fantasy football experts in the industry. I'm on my mission to make my fourth Best Ball Mania finals this year, and it is great to bring some of the sharpest minds from the industry with us so I can pick their brain so we can all learn from them. And what better way than two people who, hey, the tweet said it. Some are considering them the voices of best ball. They've got some of the greatest content, some great podcasts out, putting out 2, 3 times, 4 times a week. I don't even know. It is too hard to keep up. But then when you're not listening to them, you can dive into Hayden Winks' data, analyzing what's happening on trends, positions, draft capital, all of that. And Josh Norris, the voice who's come from so much. John Daigle was with us last week, who's apparently topped him in the draft streets, but that's okay because we are doing best ball drafting, no longer the NFL draft. Let's bring them both on. Josh Norris and Hayden Winks, how are we doing?
We're wonderful. What a way to start off another week of the quote-unquote offseason. Justin, thanks for having us.
Cheers. It is great to have you. And Hayden, how about you?
Oh, I cannot hear Hayden.
Classic start. What I was going to say is it's funny how Underdog has basically ended mock drafting for fantasy football, yet Josh tries to claim that he's the mock drafting expert. We're trying to cancel all mock drafts, but Josh likes to run around these streets.
Wow. I noticed, Justin, that when you said the voices, I don't know if that came with like a positive connotation or a negative connotation or like somewhere in between. Maybe we jump like back and forth between the two. I wonder who like the bad boys of best ball would be, Justin.
Well, so here's the thing. 3 years ago, the voices of best ball were just the multiple ones inside my head trying to tell me who I should and shouldn't draft. So It's great that everyone else now has to deal with whoever their multiple voices are, which I'm presuming is just you two.
You know what? Best ball goes back a long way. We spoke about Evan prior to the show. And I remember he and I used to do the Roto World Football podcast, and he'd like throw out MFL 10s, this and that. But like, I got to check out one of these one day. And then you just like dive into it. And it's like football Pringles. I always say it, like once you start, you can't stop doing it. And now we're here. And here is a wonderful moment in the calendar where we're like almost done with the puppy after 10 days, 111,000 entrants, and just the start of another hot best ball summer. So,
it is insane. Speaking of the puppy, I was not expecting us to still have one. I put out a tweet maybe yesterday, a couple days ago, about how I love the idea of these time boxed contests where it's not just about kind of projecting what's going to happen later on. But hey, if you have some kind of knowledge now, because I haven't been drafting backup running backs that we're not sure who the situation is, because I may as well wait until August or at least July. But if it's a tournament that closes today, it makes sense to actually get some, make some bets and lean into that ambiguity. Because if you're right, you're actually getting a unique player. On that note, there are 300 spots left.
We got to do
only about like 25 or so drafts. So we will we're mixing it up. We're doing a puppy today.
Hell yeah.
We'll jump in there pretty soon. So go on and, we're going to have some fun with this puppy. But, how have the drafts been going for you all? Because now you've got like such a large team. There's actually like miniature tournaments going on within the Underdog standpoint. What's going on?
I'm like 20 drafts in right now. I'm in a bunch of slow drafts right now. I crank out a fast draft like maybe once every 2-3 days. So that helps me keep track of all the stuff. But I basically don't miss a best ball stream online too. So it's felt like I've done like 50 drafts already.
To your point, Justin, when we were in Miami together, 2 years ago, we had like 20 total employees at the company. And so it was impossible to do these company only drafts. For everyone out there, Hayden and I cannot draft with all of you. We are just drafting with our coworkers. And now it's over, 250. But the one negative, they only like to slow draft. Like they actually like to get work done during the day. So it's just a constant churn of about 20 entries we have right now. And like every few hours you make a bit. So
you guys, because I think you guys did this a couple of years ago, but like scheduled drafts where it's like, okay, at 7 p.m. on Thursday, we're having a fast draft. And now it's like, you finish your work, you get your colleagues. It's kind of like the corporate version of your corporate happy hour.
Yeah, for sure. We'll do a few of those this summer, 100%. Like Hayden and I definitely want to draft together and do all that. We used to have to bring people on. You've done it in order to draft. And now that there are enough, this is the reason why we wanted to scale, was so we could actually draft on stream. That's the number one reason.
The only reason, literally.
And there were people that were applying and then they learned that they can't play an Underdog and they're like, I'm not sure I want to. No excuses anymore. If you want to come work for us, you can draft now.
Now, Justin, I'm also in about 20 of these slow drafts. I think in about 12 of them, I have the 12 slot. So let's be prepared for the CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson turn that everyone knows and loves already at this spot. So,
I mean, because what Devontae JT is another.
Yeah.
I have not. Let's see what the latest is. You've got CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra Saint Brown is 11 and 14. You've got Devontae at 8 and JT at 14. So maybe you get that. Now, explain to me, why are those important? Why are we talking about these matchups?
To be honest with you, I was drafting CD and Garrett Wilson even before all this news came. Even some Amon-Ra around that spot too. But it for some reason I've been getting the 11 or 12 spot in nearly every single one. So lots of experience in this slot.
I went back and rewatched that Davis Maddock stream from last year, the infamous one. It was funny and how everyone keeps talking about Ertz and Algier as the thing that like really made Josh snap. What it was is he had already drafted Kyle Pitts. So this was his second tight end, like in the first 10 rounds. And he was stacking Ertz with Pitts. And we're like, that's the same position. What are we actually doing here?
Right.
There were so many layers to this that he was making so many dumb mistakes early on. I love Davis. He's actually sharp, but he was making so many dumb mistakes in because of week 17. And then Josh and I were like, you can't be drafting like this. There's other things that matter more than week 17. So despite that, we are at least I'll say, I think week 17 matters. It doesn't matter as much as other things, but it was funny to go rewatch that video because it wasn't the Ertz Algier. It was Ertz with Pitts. That's insane.
I think it was the inflection point that we got to, Justin, at that spot.
No uniqueness, Justin. Come on. That's insane.
I like let it loose. It was just like this inflection moment, and we made like a fun, memorable experience out of it. But it's I cannot wait to have all these conversations, Justin, because I know you guys think about even way more good process ways of doing things than me and my player takes. So I'm excited to dive into it. Okay, here we are. Someone took CeeDee Lamb in front of us.
So that CeeDee Lamb, Detroit, the Dallas-Detroit game in a dome, that will not be what we're at least stacking with the Lamb aspect. We can go with the running back. We can still take Amon-Ra. What do you guys normally? I mean, hey, you're the king of the 12th spot, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, we got to go Ekeler.
Okay. And why do we have to?
Because Hayden and I did our running back rankings, and Ekeler was way up there, much higher than the 12 spot should allow him to be. Okay.
And how much risk are you including there that he doesn't play with the Chargers? That
Zero.
Maybe there's a
Zero.
I'm not expecting contract hold
there.
Okay.
I think it's close to zero. He's not going to hold out because he's actually trying to make some money. And if he gets traded, that means another team would be like really wanting him. And the Chargers didn't get a single phone call from him. So he's incentivized to just go out there and ball out again. And he's been amazing. So
I'm good with Amon-Ra here as well. It's pretty fascinating, again, just from a player take angle, how Amon-Ra is so consistent at his production, despite it was something like 78 or 80% of his targets were less than 10 yards down the field. And he also is not one of these guys that gets high value targets when it comes to touchdown scoring opportunities. And so if that just grows at all, in terms of the intermediate levels or inside the 10-yard line, then we're even on a bigger rocket ship than the consistency week to week that we're getting from Amon-Ra.
Yeah. And you mentioned high value targets, but what about just high value touches? Because so many of those were with Jamal Williams, had so many from the 1 yard line inside the 5.
Yeah.
Even with Jamal leaving, like, yeah, you could still have, but like, we're not expecting them to have that many. Is it pass interference in the end zone, tackle to the 1 yard line? So throw Amon-Ra a couple of those. And I mean, Jamison Williams, we know what's going on there, suspension. Like, there's a lot of question marks. It's not expecting Jahmyr Gibbs to come out like catching everything immediately.
For sure.
I was
thinking
kind of the inverse of like, I love Amon-Ra USC fight on the whole thing. Stud player. I will say, a couple of years ago, we were making fun of Jared Goff every single hour of the day. And now we are pricing in that Amon-Ra Saint Brown is now going to be going at the round 1-2 turn. The defense is way better this year. They've added so many pieces. What if there's not as many shootouts? What if Jared Goff starts shitting the bed a little bit? Like there's to me a little bit of downside risk with Amon-Ra Saint Brown. I love him, but like to me, like nobody's priced at their ceiling. It's impossible he can even have a better season. But there are some systemic risks, in my opinion, with the Lions. Everyone loves them. There are some things that could be changing this year. Last year, they ran extremely hot because the defense was so bad, and Jared Goff had one of his better seasons.
Completely hear you, but I will say, in today's game of fantasy, you don't need an elite QB to be an elite wide receiver. Let's look at the top ones on the board. We got Kirk Cousins. We have hurt Matthew Stafford. We have, when Tua is doing well, but there's some risk here as well. What was that?
That was a great offense, obviously, in Miami.
Yes, but but we're still drafting him. I guess maybe you're expecting a full year of Tua without him, Mike White. But then you're coming down to like Jimmy G. Goff may not be the worst of all of those, but there's definitely risk.
A couple things. One, shout out Index and Andrew and Philby and Vapor and all you guys in the chat. We see you. Two, I'm not totally on up to date on the Justin Herzig talking points of the 2023 best ball season. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel about names like Austin Ekeler, Jonathan Taylor, and Saquon Barkley being available at the turn? Like, would you ever consider going running back start there? I mean, obviously you would because you want to diversify, but
I care more about the running backs that are available late in the third. That excites me more.
I'm so with you.
Okay. When I'm comparing, like, that doesn't mean I don't like the Barkley, the Taylor, the Ekeler, but when I'm comparing to Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb, Waddle, Garrett Wilson, that's a big, like, those are elite wide receivers that all have kind of wide receiver weekly one upside, if not season long 3 or so. We then go to the next tier of running backs, and you're getting the Breece Hall, Ramondre Stevenson, even Josh Jacobs starts falling into that area. And the wide receivers we're comparing to there, I think there's a substantial tier drop because you're actually starting to look at like Debo and DK Metcalf and Calvin Ridley. And so that's where I'd rather not lock myself into RB start and then have to go with the wide receiver later on. I'm okay with getting one wide receiver in the top 2. I'll also go wide receiver, but I'm almost always going running back in that third round.
I kind of like the round 3-4 wide receivers because they're so easily stacked. Like I like Amari. I like going Ridley right there. Like I like some of these, like the quarterback 6, 7, 8 range right now as well. And I'm not sure if I want to crown Waddle, Olave, Wilson as elite wide receivers. They were like wide receiver 2s last year. They had some spiked weeks certainly, but I think there's some systemic issues with all of them, why they're probably not going to break into that tier. And I do think that there's still a difference between like Austin Ekeler and like Trevor Etienne or Jahmyr Gibbs. I think there's a pretty substantial difference there. So I like going with the running back at this spot because I'm not afraid to go like with Calvin Ridley and Amari Cooper and then be ready to stack them up and then just hammer wide receivers in round 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So one thing I'll say is the names you referenced, I believe, and I've mentioned this in this before, but a big teardrop of Ramondre and Breece and then Etienne and Gibbs. And I think even though from an ADP wise, they're like 1, 2, 3 spots away from each other and from running backs, they're like right there. I think that's a major drop off. And if you think of like an auction draft, that's in my mind like a $10 gap between them. But just because the way the draft happens, people are like, I missed those. I need a running back. They're being drafted. It's why in my mind, like, I never feel good about anyone in the 4th round unless someone is majorly falling. Like that just feels like an ugly in general round.
Even like Mike Williams, though, you can stack up. I know that doesn't feel that great, but there's still lots of upside there. Deebo Samuel thinks like he's a positive regression candidate after being a negative regression candidate for a couple of years in a row. Metcalf, you can still stack with Geno. I think I'd feel decently confident with that as well. So it's really interesting. I think there's a big advantage to drafting in the top 3, 4 spots in general because you can get the actual truly elite wide receivers and then like those running backs that you're talking about. Pick one. I like picking 2 of that spot, and like all of a sudden you have like a potential super team.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, these 4 going here is a lot earlier than I'm used to with all of them going. I feel like almost always we get a couple that are following into these 30s.
Yeah. I know, Justin, last year you made some strong player takes while totally avoiding certain players. And while I've been drafting a lot from this 12 spot, I've been just totally avoiding DeAndre Hopkins here. And maybe that's an oversight, but I'm just not into it at all.
Okay, so we are on the clock again right now. We have Mike Williams with the Ekeler if we want to go with that aspect. I'm okay with Kirk. Kind of putting that in.
Oh, yeah, Kirk really high. Wow.
Yeah, so these are ETR
rankings.
and to be honest, that's actually incorporating ADP. If you just take out ADP, I think ETR actually has Kirk like right above Calvin Ridley. Okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
So, and then you mentioned Christian Kirk, or like what were you saying as the next one? What are you thinking here? ETN obviously is the highest ADP. It's our highest ranked too. I don't feel like I need to do it, but this is again that ugly that like maybe I do it. I don't love it, but what are y'all thinking?
You pick, Hayden.
If there was another wide receiver that was like around this ADP, I would go that route. But ETN's I think fine with me.
Okay. This is
my only thing is this takes us out of like the Miles Sanders, Damien Pierce sweepstakes that
I'm gonna fight back on that.
Love. Yeah.
I think I'm about to post a column on this tonight. It's like when to draft running backs, and I looked at like all 3 of the years of data, and like when it's okay to start drafting your third running back. And obviously it's dependent on when you drafted your first and second, but the flex still matters. Like you can draft for the flex a little bit. So I think that people are delaying their running back 3 a little bit too much. There are builds where you can draft a running back 3. The only thing that you can't do with that is you can't also do elite tight end and elite quarterback. There's like basically the ante up in fantasy right now in best ball is like you have to have 4 good wide receivers. So like no matter how you get there, there's still room to have 3 wide receivers or 3 running backs with 4 good wide receivers, but you have to thread that needle. You can't go 3 good running backs and an elite quarterback and elite tight end because you are not going to catch up at wide receiver. And that's basically the ante for fantasy right now.
Yeah. And so I think it's a process versus results kind of thing. Cause I agree with you that like, it is great to have a great third running back that can fill your flex spot. However, I don't want to be drafting and especially allocating draft capital to a high third running back for that spot. I'd rather instead kind of let that draft come to me, find that value later on and say, okay, now amongst these 3 or 4 other running backs I'm drafting, I'm expecting due to injuries, due to breakouts, whatever, someone's going to fill that spot. And so I think that's where kind of yes, I want it to be a running back, but I'm not going to go into my draft and saying, hey, I need 3 really good running backs.
For sure. Yeah, this is like basically if somebody's falling to you and you want to draft a third running back because there's value there, that's one angle. The other thing is because running back prices are down another full round from last year when it was down another full round from the year previously, and the wide receivers are going up every single year. I think like the running back 24 versus the wide receiver 36 this year where they're being priced next to each other, the projections don't necessarily line up as much. So there could be a little something where the history of best ball drafts aren't actually that predictive of what's happening right now because the landscape is continuing to change more and more. So my whole thing is like, you have to have 4 good wide receivers, like period. Like there's no arguing against that. Got to get them early. The guys that there's very few true breakout wide receivers. The ones that do break out rarely go are like top 12 fantasy wide receivers. And you basically have to have some of them given the format. But I do think that you can have 4 good wide receivers and still mix in a third running back in like the top 8 rounds if ADP and kind of your projections kind of line up.
For the audience, this is also coming from someone who does not like elite tight ends. He is on the wait as long as possible in tight ends. But to be honest, that does make it a lot easier and allows you to do what you're saying. Because if you say, I'm going to draft Pat Freiermuth and 2 17th, 18th rounders or something. That's honestly like what my structure is. I like to grab kind of one of those, maybe in that dead zone where the wide receivers really fall off. The running backs are okay. I think guys like Freiermuth, like Njoku, they do have substantial.
You do like Schultz. We're going to do our tight end rankings video tomorrow, Justin, and his Dalton Schultz ranking is eye-opening.
All right, I'll give a peek behind the curtain. I've got a draft. I didn't want to put the tweet out today because I didn't want to get in the way of this stream and stuff, but like it's a meme. It's from The Office. It's Pam, and she's looking at the dude pictures, and one picture is Dalton Schultz, and one's Hayden Hurst. What's the difference?
Well, the difference is Hayden Hurst has never been a tight end one, and I also am drafting Hayden Hurst. I think it's going to be for the same reason that you're talking about. It's the beginning of your second or third stack, and because I've been leaning into the elite quarterbacks a lot, I'm drafting elite quarterback plus CJ Stroud. And there's only a couple quarterbacks I like in the back half of drafts. They are some of the rookie quarterbacks a lot of times. So Schultz, it does make some sense. Same thing with Hayden Hurst. I just think like the projections are pretty safe. They paid him well. He's just going to sit in zone coverage. And I also like, I don't think the best way to bet on CJ Stroud is by drafting him necessarily. I think it's drafting some of these kind of like pieces around him. Like maybe it's drafting Damien Pierce. And if Stroud's probably not going to be a top 12 quarterback, but if he's like the quarterback 17 all of a sudden some of these other pieces around him, Nico Collins ADP so low, Schultz's ADP so low, that's kind of like the easier way to kind of bet on that. Now offensive line's, I think, one of the better units in the league.
Yeah, no, I like betting on both. I like betting on both those offenses from a late stack standpoint. It's very easy to do. Even with the Bryce Young one, you can even get either Thielen Mingo or DJ Chark like right before you actually get Bryce Young, so you can get that easy stack. But for me, you've got Dalton Schultz. What's his ADP right now? Is he?
It's like 130 almost, isn't it?
Okay, so 127, and then Hayden Hurst is down here at 194, and like both tied to rookie QBs. Both gotten decent money in the offseason. Both of them are going to be the starting tight end on their team. Maybe this is more of like a Hayden Hurst love than a Dalton Schultz hate, but I don't think there's that much of a difference from like outcomes on this season.
Yeah,
but
Hurst has just never done it. Great name, but Hayden Hurst has just never been a thing. And Schultz has done it for a couple of years. We don't think that Dalton Schultz is very good.
No, we could also say maybe Hayden Hurst scores one more touchdown than Dalton Schultz, and like that's the only difference at tight end that matters. Like that is the feasible outcome here too.
Yeah. So interesting. Okay, we are coming back around. Herbert went here, stacked with Keenan Allen, so we missed out on that from a stack standpoint. We still have the Goff. What? Go for it. What were you saying?
No, I was just going to say, let's look at the board and see, talk through some names here.
Board or available players?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay. So I don't know about Hayden. I'm still just in this Mike Evans fade at this spot. And I guess that means for Marquise. I'm just, man, Justin, tell me where the running back dead zone is so I can target it. Like, where is it this year? Because Damien
doesn't
Pierce
exist anymore.
Piques my interest. Joe Mixon piques my interest. And I'm with Hayden. It, to me, just doesn't seem like it exists anymore with how it has changed values versus how people are drafting the position at this time.
It's at least priced in.
Yeah, it's priced in.
Okay, gosh, I'm not normally going 3 running backs here, but
to me, this is a perfect example. Like Damien Pierce just projects better than Marquise Brown. I'm sorry, like that's just kind of how it is to me. And like we're gonna have to figure out wide receivers heavy after this, but also I do wonder if we can start mixing in either.
Can we go like Damien Pierce and JSN?
That's fine with me.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with it. Seattle Pitt. There's some late Pitt stacks if you want here. We could also get Geno for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from a Damien Pierce wise, Evan Silva is working on his top 150, which is basically his by himself coming up with the 150, not looking at the socialist spreadsheets, any of that.
Good.
And the only message he had this morning was just, oh my God, I am way, way higher on Damien Pierce. Earlier in the offseason, these people know he was trying to convince us Damien Pierce over Breece Hall. I think that's a little too much, but like, and one of the things is with drafting like right now this early, granted, this is the puppy and you're not going to get like the closing line value aspects, but like you can still theoretically get value from an ADP as they move or as we become more efficient. If Damien Pierce actually ends up going in the 4th round as he thinks he will, like, yeah, you're obviously going to be taking Damien Pierce in the, what do we do, 6-1 or, 5-12 versus like if he was early 4th or something. Interesting. Yeah. I'm done with running backs for a while though.
Oh yeah.
We don't have to look at though. Yeah, like to me, like this is a build where if we go with the 4th one, let's say there's another fall that just like absolutely just knocks us unconscious because he's fallen 15 spots ahead or after ADP. I'm fine with going 4 running backs. That's kind of been the data on that's a little wonky. I'm not going to lie, but I think that there's some merit to it, especially if we're going for upside. Or we just go round 16, 18 with 2 guys like a Jerome Ford and Malik Davis. And then we're good. We wash our hands. So we just have to basically like catch up at wide receiver these next couple of picks. And I think we're back on track.
Just quickly on that, Justin.
Yeah.
And I just want to throw out some player take ideas on Damien Pierce. Like to me, he is the prime example of just the team environment around him being better. And that will like raise the tide for him because I mean, he barely scored touchdowns last year. He scored 4 rushing touchdowns all season long.
And Singletary sucks at the goal line.
5 touchdowns in general. He only had 15 carries inside the 10-yard line last season. Yeah. And so for a team that is just going to be better offensively, like I think you can even take a negative outcome scenario for a bunch of these pieces and still they will be better than they were last year. Damien Pierce, who earned the job based on his play and his teammates, how much they loved him at the end of preseason last year, is just going to have a much better scoring outcome and touchdown outcome, I think, at the end of it of this season as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. I like that. When thinking about, so one more thing with the running backs aspect, and Leon touched on this a little with the Best Ball Manifesto, is earlier in the offseason, it's May, it's June, I'm more willing to invest more draft capital into the starting running backs because we have so little information about who's going to be those good values in the 16th, 17th, and 18th round. The names that you just mentioned there, Hayden, like, yes, those might be the number 2 guys. Those guys may also not even be game day actives. And so when we get to July, August, especially August, we actually have an idea of who the backups are. Now, those guys are still going in the 16th, 17th, 18th round. It's not like they just got shot up to the like early rounds. So that's when I'm more willing to kind of say, okay, I'm willing to just go with maybe no running backs or one running back very early, wait a whole bunch, because now my dart throws are guys that I actually know are the number 2s. And so that's just something to think about, like when you're drafting right now. We have better confidence, better ideas who the late wide receivers are that are at least going to have playing time. You can get a Robert Woods, you can get a Tyquan Thornton in the last round. I'm going with the 2 different: a young guy who at least can have a role, and an old guy who's going to have a role immediately.
Yeah, find this year's Zay Jones.
Yeah. That's our next. We got to do a YouTube video on that. Finding the next Zay Jones.
Yeah.
One guess right now.
One guess right now.
Let me pull up over the cap and just sort by how much money. It's like Russell Gage or something like that.
No.
It's not that'd be too bad.
Looking late.
Van Jefferson would be one for me.
Van, I think, is a really good call. Actually, the
Richie
guy
James?
and he's been going earlier and earlier. That, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but we just took a running back who was round 18 was Jerome Ford. Like that's who I was getting over and over and over again as the final pick.
I mean, and the reason why is because I think it was at the combine, they started you heard some murmurs out. Was it the combine when they started kind of talking up Jerome Ford a bit from a coaching staff? We know that they've liked him. He does play special teams, so he's going to be a game day active. They did not like Hunt, had no interest in bringing him back. So probably shows some level more trust than what they have. Didn't draft anyone. A lot of signs are pointing to a guy that for the most part, no one really knew who he was last year for the casual fantasy football fan.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So zeroing into these wide receivers, I would happily take Brandon Cooks, not so much Cortland Sutton. Juju's an interesting conversation here, Hayden, that we haven't spent a bunch of time on because we just did our top 24.
Judy balled out late last year. I think Cortland Sutton, it's bad.
So Cooks and Dak was a decent one with the Detroit.
Yeah.
Denver with the LAC isn't bad either.
I think Sutton is like done.
Yeah, but I think this is like correlation and ADP and all that. So we have to. This is like the
need.
This is where you have to pay the price.
Okay.
Like sometimes when you draft Damien Pierce, this is the cost that you're paying with it. So we have to live with it.
I am nervous just from, again, a player take standpoint that Cortland Sutton just has no juice left.
Possibly.
He's toast.
I think it's completely fair. But all these wide receivers have substantial question marks at this point. We could go Quentin Johnston, even though we didn't get Justin Herbert, and just going heavy on the LAC. I'm at least going to put in the queue.
You guys have Bateman ranked pretty low. I think that he has upside just like based off uncertainty, and the ADP is not that egregious.
Okay. I'm just going to take Johnston, sticking with our Chargers. This is an example where you can still stack a team, even though you don't end up with their quarterback. You're looking for an environment where, yes, Daniel Jones and Tom Brady last year. Yes, if you had Mike Evans, if you had Chris Godwin, you wanted to have Tom Brady, but you also could have just had Mike Evans, just had Chris Godwin, then also had Daniel Jones, who put up, I think it was a point less than Tom Brady, and you still could advance. So I think there still is some correlation when you're stacking teams, wide receivers, even if you miss out on the quarterback.
For Quentin Johnston, I think he landed in the perfect spot for asking him what he can do well this season. Like, he had a ton of warts on his profile. A lot of it was really good too, but I think, Hayden, they're only going to ask him to basically do what he does well as a rookie, and then hopefully he can just develop from there. And that's ideal.
Yeah, it's perfectly ideal. I think he's going to struggle, or he's going to play like he's going to be a part-time player to start and then just like giddy up from there.
Yep.
The other thing about stacking without the quarterbacks, it's really just this team. Keenan Allen tears his ACL in week 1, and then all of a sudden now you have everyone else projects better. So like, to me, like that's part of the correlation is just we don't think about or insurance at wide receiver, which is always silly to me because the second that it happens in the season, we project better. Everyone gets excited in DFS, but we pretend in the offseason that target competition doesn't matter for some reason. I don't understand that at all. But to me, there's just upside here if with a Keenan Allen injury.
Yeah, I would say it's harder. It is easy for me to say when this running back goes down, this running back.
Yeah, compared to running backs, yes.
And I can project. But
sure.
Wide receivers, yes, if a player goes down, because I mean, example is, I don't know, Eagles last year, Dallas Goedert goes down.
Mm-hmm.
Wes Watkins was actually the beneficiary there. Like, could we have predicted that before the season? Maybe. I don't know. That's kind of hard and such. But I agree with you. Like, this is an example where when you have the clear concentrated route tree, stud 10, 12 targets a game, Keenan Allen goes down. Yes, it makes sense. And like, I'm not going to probably do the Josh Palmer on this team, but like, that's where you can actually start thinking through like, okay, who are the ones that are going to be benefit from it?
Yep.
He was so 2022.
And even one chance.
And even then.
So we are 100% going to Dr. Frankenstein this tight end room because we've passed on some good ones, like we've passed on Dallas Goedert, we've passed on Kyle Pitts, which I totally get. Like, Hayden, this is probably something we should have talked about even more heading into last year was this approach that you took and how now we have 3 years of data. If you didn't have Travis Kelce, putting together a mishmash of rooms and hopefully one scores a tight end or a touchdown each week is the right way of doing it. Or not the right way, one way of doing it because it has a process behind it.
Yeah, I was looking at spike weeks and the percentage of spike weeks by the elite tight ends versus the elite quarterbacks, elite running backs, and elite wide receivers. The tight ends have a smaller percentage of the spike weeks. So there's that reason, and that's including data from Travis Kelce not missing any time and absolutely dominating. If you remove him from the data, then if he gets injured or something like that, everything else is going to go up. Same like George Kittle, he's a little bit older. Darren Waller's a little bit older. So we'll say like Kyle Pitts is one of the elite tight ends. He's never done it before. So there's some reasons why I'm against it. Not in redraft, but in best ball, just because you don't have to predict the touchdowns. The touchdowns will inevitably happen.
All right, so let's pull in the thread a little for the late tight end. Overall, first off, go recommend check through Hayden's kind of recent tweets. He's got a couple different articles on there. I think, the one you were just talking about that talked about the spike weeks, touchdown, I think it was 56%. It was like one of the lowest of the spike weeks tight end. So all valuable information, but actionable insight there. You're not recommending that I should just wait until 15, 17, 18 and draft 3 tight ends. What are your thoughts on like, okay, who are the dart throws? Is it in this range with Freiermuth, with Njoku? Is it a little later with Chig and with Higbee and Dulcich? What is kind of the right pairing where you're still trying to get upside? And again, we're at a point in the draft where the wide receivers have hit a major cliff. The running backs have hit a major cliff. The QBs are still there. Is this one we should start considering tight end for a 3 late strategy or what?
My biggest thing is just correlating tight ends because they are less reliant on receiving yards and receptions versus wide receivers, and they're more reliant on touchdowns. So whatever quarterback I draft, I usually just like to draft their tight ends. I like going 1 mid-range tight end and then 2 later. I've also gone 2 mid-range tight ends. I will say part of the thing that kind of gets lost is we haven't really had like the late round tight end that's like absolutely gone to the moon the last couple of years. Like Darren Waller at one point was the tight end 38 in drafts and finished as a top 5 tight end. Wait till we start getting some of that data when that eventually happens back into the data as well. So like we had like a little bit Evan Ingram last year. David
right.
Njoku.
Ingram and Njoku. Yeah.
I mean, so 2 years ago, the last 2 years,
Schultz was one.
The last 2 years, the top 6 tight ends, 3 of them were late draft picks. 2 years ago, it was Schultz, Gronk, and Knox. Last year, it was Taysom, it was Ingram, and who was the third that we just mentioned?
Njoku.
Right. And
Njoku would have. I'm almost talking about like getting into like the elite. Like those guys were like the top 6.
They were top 6 scores, right?
Because like of other factors, they were like hanging on like at 10
consistency, to be honest. And that's the tough is you can very easily find consistency at the end of your drafts with tight end. The argument is, can you find the spike weeks to match the elite ones? And I think that's where this is up for debate. Now, we have 3 QBs here that all are stack partners for ours. We also have Pat Freiermuth, and we need a tight end.
Okay, let's go Geno.
I kind of want to go Geno and Pat, and that's the games. That's the week 17.
I'm fine with that. I would also be fine with Goff. It's a little bit early for him, but yeah, I'm fine with this.
Pat, makes sense. It's the week 17 stack, positions of need. Yeah, I don't hate this at all. I think this actually worked out pretty well given where we're standing.
Justin, I've been kind of, I don't know like what to call it exactly, but there's usually like one position where I like want to tank. So I know for sure I'm getting more of that position. I'm getting the 6th running back. I'm getting the 9th wide receiver. I'm getting the 3rd tight end or the 3rd quarterback. This is like the build where it's like, okay, like I haven't like, if we went like Geno plus Goff, I know I'm done. If we went Pat plus Njoku, I know I would be done there. This is like where it's like I'm struggling with like, is it better to like just be like I'm going the 2 studs so I know for sure I'm going the 3rd, or do you just like let the board fall to you and just go from there?
Yeah. So in general, I'm a full proponent of what you're saying, where I don't want a well-balanced team where I'm trying to hit every position. I want to lean into and just say like, okay, these 2 positions I'm extremely strong on. This position, I need a couple things to go right, but there's definitely a story for it. And then the last one, I'm more so just trying to like say, hey, I want to be a league average, because to be league average, it's not that difficult. Where you are getting the value is if you can actually be elite at a position or 2. That's where the difference between that kind of RB1 and RB2, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, or the groupings if you're going to spend a little more capital. And so that's where I want to invest to really just dominate a room at 1 or 2 positions, because the difference between finishing 10th or 10th or 30th, I would say, at a position from a team, from a positional group standpoint, is not actually that different. So I'm okay with, as you're saying, let me tank this position. Let me just get to league average at best case, and I'm okay with that. So in this case, I hate going 3 QBs, 3 tight ends. I'm hoping that we get another second QB here that we're pretty content with. But maybe we get a tight end there and we just say, you know what, Fryermuth in that second tight end, we're okay with, and then we will go 3 QBs.
Yeah, it's very hard. Like the teams I struggle with are like this one where it's like you have Geno as your quarterback 1. Like I hate punting quarterback points on this. Like that's the other thing. And it's like sounds so simple. Like whenever I like actually tweet this out or write this or talk about it, I always feel so dumb. But tight ends in half PPR score significantly fewer points than all the other positions. So like to me, it's like, okay, if I'm gonna punt one of these positions, why not punt the position that like averages 8 points in your roster, 10 points in your roster, versus punting the position like quarterback where like they're averaging like 18 up to like 26 in a season.
Right. The one thing I would say there is I'm okay with punting quarterback if I'm literally punting my entire team with that quarterback or with those 2 quarterbacks. Meaning, if I only went, let's go crazy, but I'm going to go with CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. But I also went crazy on those pass catchers. Now, yes, this team is probably going to suck if you're only of those 2 QBs.
But you still need
in
one
the
thing,
case,
right?
In the case that one of those 2 teams breaks out, all of those pass catchers you have are also now going to have a great year. So that's where that correlation is. Okay, I'm okay with taking a really bad projection on QB, because in the case that one of these 2 really outperforms, you get the Justin Fields last year. I guess that's a different example because it's not with the pass catching, but like you get the breakout, Jared Goff. That's a good example.
Yep.
Now my team actually looks really good.
Is there something to, I'm just spitballing here at this point, going early running back so you could finish with 4, maybe 5, if the 5th one's really bad, and going 3 quarterbacks because you're adding correlation through more of your draft picks? Like the running back is correlated least, at least in the 1 game sample at ceiling outcomes with the rest of these positions. So what if you just like load it up on that position, and then all of a sudden all your quarterback picks, you're adding if you drafted that 14th round quarterback, that's adding correlation to your 6th round wide receiver, your 9th round tight end, and like all this other thing where maybe we should be tacking on a 3rd quarterback because adding correlation everywhere where the running back isn't really doing that, at least in like the 1 game sample for the week 17 days.
Yeah, I think my takeaway there is less I want to draft a whole bunch of running backs early and more of I'm willing to draft tight ends and go more depth with wide receivers late because I can get that correlation aspect. I don't know. I just think, go for it.
The late round or the latest wide receivers are the only wide receivers that are actually fallen in ADP. Like after wide receiver 60, they're down almost a full round versus last year and the years previous. All the other wide receivers are up. So maybe while like 6, 7, 8 wide receiver builds have been pretty strong the last couple of years. 10 wide receiver builds were strong the first year. So maybe we kind of flip this a little bit. That's the one thing you have to like look at ADPs versus the last couple of years, because if you're only looking at historical data and all the prices have changed, then you're not really doing anything.
Right. Because if we think about BBM team originally, it was a hyper fragile team. It was the 4 running backs. I don't remember exactly, but I think it was like first round, third round, maybe like 6th and 8th or something like that. Hyper fragile, I used a lot that year because that's where I could, focus on these QBs, and I could still get solid wide receivers in rounds 9, 10, and 11 and such. Mm-hmm. As wide receivers have moved up, last year, I moved away from hyper fragile. And I said, okay, I still want to invest in running backs, but I'm going to go with more a 5 running back build. That's not hyper fragile, but I'll wait pretty late until like late 10, 11, 12 to grab those other 3 running backs. So I'm taking 2 early on. Then I know I need to stack up the wide receivers and go there. As wide receivers keep moving forward, it means it's can't just
get box out. Yeah.
Right. So now I'm like, okay, I'm going to draft 1 running back in the first round. Maybe I go with that 3rd that I really like.
Nico.
Nico. Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
Okay. And
to
then
stack up, get ready for Stroud.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys are not enthused. I really wanted Mingo here, to be honest with you, but that's just me looking at individuals. So
I want to look at this guy's team and tilt. I can't believe we just lost we lost Russ there for the Sutton.
Yep.
And game stack. All right.
Don't worry. Naked Cortland Sutton is exactly what you're going to need in the puppy one. That's exactly what you're going to need.
I mean, we may as well.
Oh no! What? No! Why are we taking Chig?
Well, because you just drafted Nico Collins.
No, but we don't have to do it that way. Let's wait on the second tight end. I don't think we need to get a second tight end.
Okay.
What about Chark for Bryce eventually?
Mingo just went. This is ugly.
No tight end, Justin.
Yeah,
let's totally wait on this second and third tight end now. Totally wait.
Oh, okay. So the thought process was when we lost Russ, we've kind of lost a 2 QB build. Agreed?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Losing a 2 QB build, we are 3. I don't want to go 3-3. Maybe if we went with Chig, then we've got Pat and Chig and we can stop at tight end. We're not going to have great tight ends, but we're only devoting 2 draft capital to it. We're now not going with 3s and the onesies. And we got the Houston, Tennessee kind of week 17 correlation. Mm-hmm. And if we were saying we were going to go CJ Stroud, that's that full game stack later on. I mean, we'll see. I honestly still, depending on what tight end we get next, may just want to stick with 2 tight ends and just lose that position.
Yeah,
that's fine with me.
I have no problem with that.
The one problem with that that take that you just had is Chig is going to have about 6 points per game because he can't block and he's too small and that offense is egregious. So while we thought we would have had only 2 tight ends, we truthfully would have only had one and a quarter.
So good example here. That is your player take. You obviously are probably in the top 1% of like player takes and stuff. When someone has a player take like that, what is the strategy for, hey, this fits with my week 17 correlation. This fits a positional need. Oh, there's even a little ADP value here versus, but he's only going to get 6 points a game.
Well, to me, the week 17 correlation, there's, very small actual bring back correlation. I'm always just looking for like the team stacks. And obviously breaking ties, I will go with the week 17 correlation. Like obviously it matters, but to me, like it comes down like Levitan's tweet where it's like your player take, your projections, all that stuff comes first, and then you get to the week 17. So to me, it's just like I don't think that Chig Okonkwo projects any better than Hayden Hurst. So I would rather just wait a little bit and find week 17 correlation at another spot. And to me, like with Chark there, we were thinking about the correlation of, okay, we're going to need a second and third quarterback at this point. Maybe we can get Stroud and Bryce Young both to fall to us. So we were setting up, instead of the small bring back correlation, we were setting up the actual correlation, both season long and in a 1 week sample with quarterback and wide receiver.
Makes sense. At the end of the day, now that we've all agreed that Hayden Hurst and Dalton Schultz and Chig are all basically the same thing.
Kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
That's why I'm waiting. Like, give me like round 14, 16, 18 tight ends and just add some correlation and see what happens.
And just to continue on the Chig thing, Justin, I think he's an awesome player. He's also the type that we all fall for because he is the hyper athletic receiving tight end, but he's not going to be an every down player. And this is just not analytically, a narrative version of me thinking about this during the season. Did he and Treylon Burks ever overlap with like a good week? Like in some ways, when Treylon went down, they utilized Chig in this similar profile. And also we talk so often about red zone looks and inside the 10-yard looks for these tight ends. Chig is big play reliant. And last year he barely saw action inside of the red zone and inside the 10-yard line. And if we also believe, and who knows, maybe Mike Vrabel makes us look like idiots once again, that the Titans are just going to be worse and score fewer touchdowns this year, that's going to hurt his opportunity to put points on the board as well at that position. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't even know who the quarterback's going to be. I think from a fantasy, you want it to be Ryan Tannehill, but then what's your level of confidence that it'll still be Tannehill by the end of the season? I think it's very slim. It's tough to really invest kind of other than I think Treylon Burks, because it doesn't matter who's throwing. I think he's just going to eat up volume.
It's kind of amazing, and this is a tiny little sample, but just to look at where Chig was getting his targets, he had 22 of them inside of his own 21 to 50-yard line, and then the rest of the field was about 30 in general. So it was like he was a narrow role player his first year, and if that does expand, that would be exciting. But I think it is difficult, Hayden, for us to see players like this like totally pay off in year 2.
He's also a
narrow
massive
role
regression
player
candidate.
on a bad offense with a questionable QB.
And I like
my
him.
thing.
Yeah,
I love narrow role playing tight ends on strong offenses because that's what we saw with the Evan Ingram, with the Gronk from 2 years. And I mean, not Gronk, but with the Dawson Knox and such, because if they can actually earn a little more work, it's such a high powered offense. They can score high
touchdowns.
That's not the case for Tennessee.
All right,
I'm in this spot all the time. Another pairing I like here is Jordan Love, Luke Musgrave. If I'm kind of punting this is another kind of stack that I do find myself gravitating towards just because there's a lot of uncertainty there. And if you even miss out on that and you want to get even crazier, you can go Tucker Kraft if you want to. But the other thing about the late round tight ends are if you're going to be like the players that have an ADP of like 180, they still get drafted almost 100% of the time. But the players with the tight end with an ADP of like 205, they're only going to get drafted like 20% of the time. So you're going to even get a drafted rate boost from like someone like Luke Musgrave where he's being drafted currently.
I do not want to take Kenny Pickett, but obviously he stacks with Pat Freiermuth as well.
I like holding on to that where if Stroud is not available, we wanted to go Pickett instead. Like we have that later on. I've got Bryce Young at least centered up here because I just like from a range of outcomes and options. I would have liked Gallup to fall to us, even though I'm not a huge Gallup fan. Gives us a little of that correlation. We're looking for the Amon-Ra, and he would have been top of the board here. So we're taking Bryce.
Can we do Van? Is anyone opposed to that?
Talk me through Dawson Knox. Are we okay if we grab Dawson Knox with just going two tight ends? That's all I'm saying.
No, I don't think Dawson Knox counts as your second tight end.
Okay. I think he's going to be
he's going to be even more of a blocker this year than he has been in the past.
Okay. Gerald Everett gets that Chargers.
Everett gets
overall.
More for me. He gets me going.
That's okay. Is there a point where you think there's too many pass catchers? I mean, I'm fine with it. I don't think the answer probably is we care all that much, but we are pushing it.
Yeah. So in general, you want to have 1 to 3 pass catchers with your QB, 1 to 2 running backs. From if you don't have the QB aspect, it's a bit more of a kind of hodgepodge, but I want to be clear because that's what Leone's data showed. However, drafting 2 or 3 pass catchers in the first 7 rounds is very different than 2 or 3 pass 100%. Catchers at the very end 100%. Because we're already not expecting much out of a 13th, 14th round tight end. And so I'm not really concerned like, oh, that's another one in that offense because what does he really have to do to hit value? And again, you're betting on the whole team. So in a week 17 sample size, we probably have too many Chargers. Like we definitely have too much Chargers. At least we have the running back. So it's not like Justin Herbert has to throw up 5 touchdowns. You can have it spread out. But across the season, we are still making a bet that the Chargers are a very good team this year. And I guarantee you, we are pissing off whoever drafted Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen.
Has Leone looked at flea flicker correlation yet? Because we need an Austin Ekeler to Gerald Everett flea flicker. We need to start getting these into the models.
I think the only thing we have is the Marcus Mariota throwing to himself touchdown pass. Those are really hard to model, but if you can get that right, I mean, that's a lot of points.
That's not bad.
Okay. So what? These are our final. Yeah, 15, 16, 17, final 4 rounds.
Let's take a look at the team. QB, we have Geno and Bryce. From a stack standpoint, we've got JSN and we got the Pat Freiermuth Week 17 bring back. From a Bryce Young, we've got the DJ Chark, and they are going against Jacksonville, which is the Travis Etienne. So strong Week 17 correlation there. It's working there. We also have a couple, I believe, from a mini stack standpoint, we've been at least exploring. LAC, a lot of Chargers, Cortland Sutton on the bring back there. I'm okay with stopping at tight end because of where we are and just saying we're not going to have the best, but like it's okay because we really do need another quarterback.
I'm fine punting tight end. That's kind of my strategy. So this is basically a version of late round tight end. You just like it's my strategy isn't late round tight end. It just says who cares tight end. Like it's just like it doesn't matter at all. Yeah. So I think we just need a little bit more correlation. Just a big picture thing. When do we know that there's going to be ownership concerns with Week 17, not team stacks, but game stacks. And I've ran the numbers there. It's to me, it's like how Levitan put it. It's like almost like a tiebreaker. That's how little the bring back correlation really is. If everyone's going to be doing it, at what point are you a little bit concerned about the ownership? Because it doesn't take that much to get there.
All right. So last year, Week 17 was all the talk, right? Like we were pushing a lot of Week 17. I don't think we're doing it more this year. Are we? Maybe.
I think more people are going to.
I think more of the comments bring it up than just the streamers bring it up, if that makes sense.
That's fair. But I would say last year we were still very strong in Week 17. And we saw on average there were 1.4 game stacks correlation in Week 17. In Week 16, it was 1.34. The difference, we assume that not many people were stacking Week 16, so we can assume that's random. 1.34 to 1.4 is a very, very small amount. So I think in our bubble, even though it feels like this, you're still not having that enough to really say, hey, now I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to not do it because of contrarian or to be unique or such. I think we still have a long ways to go is what I'm getting at.
I think that's probably the answer. When you do a study like that, though, you could run into the risk of like who just actually played well in Week 16 to create the Week 17. So like I would like maybe replicate that study with just looking at the teams that were drafted in general and then running that study. But that is a good way to look at that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is that, you'd have to basically just look at the data set and see how much correlation there is on a given week versus Week 17. Mm-hmm. Well, I think his was all like just looking at the teams that made it there. Again, there's so many things we can continue to learn in this space, insane. But I'm still of the opinion that like,
I don't think
maybe it changes in the future a little bit more. Okay, Justin, and I'm not trying to get you like to rank of like which one's the most important to the least important, but from what I absorb, so much of it is who is falling the furthest in ADP and just to scoop up the values, right? Have you found when you are utilizing your own individual rankings, it is difficult for you to see who is falling and so on the board for ADP values? Does that make sense?
Not really.
By uploading the ranks, like you uploaded the ranks, is a little harder to navigate. Who's the best available player in ADP value, or do you just not care? My takes are better.
No. Okay. So I'll start with the ranks. And then when I'm looking at a player standpoint, I will scroll down to be like, okay, in this range. Mm-hmm. And if that player is like not even showing up on the screen below, so like if this is this, and then I go to here, I don't care if their ADP is whatever, like that means they're just an outlier and I'm probably not going to be drafting much of them. Okay. But I am very willing to kind of get real-time ADP value. Maybe I'm giving up closing time value. But even if it's a player I'm not in love with, just to get kind of a, that overall real-time value, overall portfolio standpoint.
Yeah, I'm with both of you guys, and the ADP market is somewhat efficient. I don't think that there aren't people that can't beat it. Now, right. I think everyone thinks that they can beat it, so you have to actually like check yourself, but I do think there's ways to beat it.
All right, I want to touch on, this is fun to kind of touch on two things. First off, the Kenny Pickett. Yeah. We have Pitt, we have Seattle. They play each other Week 17. You do not actually want to draft quarterbacks that are in the same game. I can go into that a little more later, but because they correlate so well,
Let's do Stroud.
Mr. Stroud.
Yeah, oh yeah, Stroud. Yeah, he's up there too. Devin Singletary. We have Damien Pierce. I'm a fan of this. We've talked about this before. I think that this is a decent value on the pick, as well as there's the ping pong, there's the correlation. Houston's actually a better team. They run a little more. Maybe there's an injury aspect here or there. Hayden seems in agreement.
What
Seems.
What about Chuba? Because we're adding more correlation.
No, not Chuba.
Dude, name me who's his competition. Tell me who their RB3 is.
Miles Sanders.
No, who's their RB3 when Miles Sanders misses time?
No, Miles Sanders is going to be the three-down player.
It doesn't matter that Chuba's
Laviska?
not good.
Is Laviska still there?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, extended handoffs, Visca.
Okay, I'm with you, Justin.
I prefer Singletary over Chuba in that regard.
Straight up, yes. This is where the dynamic changes.
Now, and I don't know if we would have gotten him, but let's say figuratively, if we could have passed on Devin Singletary there, and maybe I would have taken like Tyquan Thornton, and then we gotten Jerome Ford in the next round, then I would have preferred that one.
Cleveland and New England don't play each other week 17.
I know.
You're giving up 1 cent of value, Josh. Think about the 1 cent of value.
But maybe that's like me with already drafting, like 43% Jerome Ford where he's going at this moment.
Herza, can you go through the galaxy brain real quick of Damien Pierce and Devin Singletary?
Yes. Yeah. So at the most basic level, you are not giving up advanced rate value if you're not drafting two running backs in the same team early on. Zeke Pollard back in the day, it's probably Gibbs and Montgomery now. The best way to do it is actually two middle ones where there's ambiguity on who the leader is. That would have been Miami before Asian, and now it's a little dirty with three, but I think Gibson and Robinson's a great example where you can draft both of those. One of them breaks out. Maybe they split ping pong here or there, and there's still value, but we know that you're not giving up ADP value. So if I'm not giving advance rate value, now come playoffs, you have the opportunity that, hey, Damien Pierce was an absolute, amazing draft pick. Top 5 running back, top 10 running back. The teams that advance, he's probably got like on 30% of them. He has a great week 15. Week 16, he gets hurt.
Yeah.
That team has already shown a proclivity for wanting to run and running effectively because Damien Pierce did that so well. Devin Singletary now subs in. Also, not many people are actually handcuffing or drafting the two of them. So now I'm getting a very unique Devin Singletary team in the finals that while other people are already losing Damien Pierce, they have a dead roster spot. So in this scenario that you get Damien Pierce having a huge year, Devin Singletary comes in for the playoffs or vice versa, you're setting yourself up for such a great week 17 scenario as so many people have lost their best running back. Yeah. You now have a unique player who's on a team who's had a great success. Like we haven't seen it perfectly play out yet, but like that's my overall thesis around it.
And I will say there's a big difference between doing that with like a first or second round running back with his backup versus Damien Pierce, because you're drafting the first and second round running backs because they are like actual true difference makers. The offense like rolls around them. Like if Derrick Henry misses time, Tyjae Spears is not getting Derrick Henry role. Like I don't think it's getting that.
I don't know, but I get what you're saying. I get Christian McCaffrey. Okay, but yeah.
I think maybe a better example would be Miles Sanders to Chuba Hubbard, for example. Like,
oh my God,
Chuba Hubbard will not get a 3-down role.
But the price is that he only has to become a 5th rounder.
I'm going to throw Austin Ekeler, Josh Kelly. Austin Ekeler is valuable because the pass catching role, and that is unique to his skill set. If he gets hurt, even if Josh Kelly is the primary workhorse there, he's not catching nearly as many passes, so you're not getting that direct fill-in value. Agree with that.
Okay.
But,
so what we have two
Elijah Mitchell's kind of interesting. Yeah. We have our 3 QBs.
Good.
We just grabbed Houston here. Houston playing Tennessee in both week 15 and 17. We do not have a Tennessee bring back, so we could at least consider something there if something falls.
Kyle Phillips for the win. Let's go.
I do have a running back that I want to add to this team. It's another Silva throwout. He was throwing him in the chat today, and it's someone who's probably been drafted like 0.01% of times.
You about to Hassan Haskins this or Dontrell Hilliard this one?
But I'm going to wait till it's our turn because the puppy is full. I don't even know if anybody's drafted him. We shall see. It'll be a fun last pick. Chad, if you think you know who it is, if you think you know, I'm going to give a free BBM entry if anybody can guess who the player is. It has to be the first person. So put it in chat if you can guess who the running back that I am going to be drafting or talking about is.
It's like,
Well, it's not a rookie because we know Evan doesn't watch the rookies.
Are you freaking serious? Someone must have been in a
There it
draft
is.
with me earlier.
We were
today.
talking about Ty Chandler. Yeah. There you go.
Okay. Shoot me a DM on Twitter. Watch him get drafted before he even gets to us now. But
I like that call.
Yeah. A lot of people with Dwayne McBride, great rusher, one of the breaking tackles, fantastic. But he is a 7th round rookie. And so Evan was talking very highly about Ty Chandler. So
where do you think McBride's going to go if Dalvin gets released? Do you think McBride?
Madison's the one.
Yeah, Madison's going to go to I think the 4th round, something like that. I mean, maybe there's going to be some Chandler buzz versus McBride. I think one of them will go to the 13th, 14th round. So I think getting some exposure to both those is smart.
Yeah, and I mean there goes Jerome Ford. Yeah, Madison. So that's the one that I was thinking about. Where does Madison actually get drafted? And it feels like around Miles Sanders.
Mm-hmm. Round 5, round 4.
End of 4, early 5. I think that's right. And I think that's immediate. That's where he starts maybe in the 5th, because there's still this kind of overhanging of, okay, are they going to bring in Kareem? Are they going to bring in Fournette, Zeke? Okay, we got Chandler. We're going to draft him. Kenny Pickett's still available. I think we need a wide receiver. What are we thinking?
Darius Slayton is there for a spiked week. I mean, there's Robert Woods to continue on with our Houston and our Texans and Chargers love. What could go wrong, guys?
I mean, we do.
They follow the money, Hayden. They gave Robert Woods a contract.
Corey Davis is going to sign with the Panthers or the Texans after he gets released.
I don't know. They came out pretty publicly that they really like him.
One last ditch effort for a trade.
Don't you want Josh Palmer to be our 5th Charger? I mean, I think we just go with Robert Woods. I think for the stack, I think he's probably the best projection.
Jesus.
It's not sexy, but
hey, 2nd year come back from the ACL. I talk about with other players. I guess we have to do with Bobby Trees too. And USC, why not?
What could go wrong with this team?
Hey, highest projected wide receiver available, plus with the correlation and to go with CJ Stroud, we've got Nico, we've got Robert Woods, and we've got Damien Pierce.
I do that all the time.
Devin Singletary.
Dude, I draft so many Texans right now.
I'm just sad that we didn't end up with a Titan, but and it would have been.
I mean, of the teams that I didn't get a bring back option, I feel I can go to bed that it was the Tennessee Titans, because we cannot even project who they are going to be trotting out there. They might be in the XFL by the time week 17 rolls.
Justin, I'm going to put you on the spot. Okay. I thought one of the best player take angles of last summer was you totally fading Justin Herbert, totally fading. And that worked out. Even though Justin Herbert was good as an individual, as a whole, it did not work out. Do you have one of those this year?
And I'll pause real quick. I think it worked out so well because you look at the quarterbacks that were drafted around him, specifically Jalen Hurts was right there. And that was the reason for the fade, was just that Justin Herbert does not have, he needs insane passing efficiency to compete with these other quarterbacks. Lamar was only a half a round before. Hurts was right there. And so that's where it was. Give me these rushing QBs. I actually like Justin Herbert this year. And I like Justin Herbert this year for 2 main reasons. One is his ADP hasn't really changed. It's about that same spot, while all the other ones moved up. So the QBs that I'm looking for this year are really the ones that their ADP feels similar to what it was last year, but with substantial upside. And I think with Kellen Moore coming in that offense, yes, so often, Keenan Allen was so pivotal to that offense. We didn't even realize it until he was gone, because we thought Josh Palmer could kind of sub in. Him being there for a whole year, if it happens, or at least getting that actual Quentin Johnston aspect. So I'm actually in on Justin Herbert. I love the stacking aspects. I think that team is going to throw a ton with Kellen Moore there. So this isn't maybe the take you were looking for, but I was very out on him. Literally had him on 0%, 1 out of 150 teams last year. In on him this year.
No, I'm asking for the one this year.
Yeah,
the one that I'm
out on.
In comparison to the person he is going against, to think through this same thought process. Is there one that you're just this guy doesn't make sense when I can just draft this guy every single time?
So to be honest, it's Lamar. And
wow.
For me, yes. And And he's going right now, his pick, I think his ADP is 30. I think he's going to end up even moving up a couple spots. The gap between him from an ADP and the guys above him is actually not that large. But if you look at actually from a performance wise, even when he's healthy, when he was playing very well, started last season off with multiple 3 TD games, he was still averaging 3 fantasy points per game, less than the 3 elite QBs above him. So I think that gap actually between him and the elite 3 is quite substantial. But the gap in the actual ADP is not. So at his current price, I am fading him. And again, you say when comparing to who he's against, I can get Ramondre Stevenson, I can get Breece Hall. I'm taking those guys, those running backs ahead of Lamar, or I'd rather actually say, you know what, I'm going to stack before and grab one of those elite QBs because they actually have a higher median and upside than we've seen with Lamar.
He's going to be at the 2-3 turn because week 17, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle right there, they get drafted with the teams being drafted 1, 2, 3, 4 every single time.
The way that it would change for me is if he gets pulled up enough and then Mark Andrews somehow falls. Because right now, you can't really get to Lamar and Mark unless you're
reach.
I mean, I guess you could do it with Tyreek, Lamar at like pick 17, 18, and then Andrews at 31, something like that.
Yeah,
that's what you probably got to do. That's honestly what's probably going to eventually happen by the end of this. And so that's Lamar is the one that I'm out on because even though the offense is so much better, even though Todd Monken is there, I do still think there's a gap between him and those other top 3 QBs.
Josh, mine right now would be Jonathan Taylor. I just like Saquon, Ekeler more. I think Chubb is better. I think Tony Pollard eventually will get there. Josh Jacobs is right there as well. Like he has to be he is very good, but like that offense was, people forget how bad that Colts offense was last year. And we like Anthony Richardson, but I don't think Anthony Richardson's going to help out his running backs too much. And it's the first year of Anthony Richardson. And we said that he needs some development. Like he's not starting from nothing, but he's definitely needs some development. So I just think we have to be realistic with ourselves. Like Nick Chubb, who's I would say better than Jonathan Taylor, if not the exact same, attached to Deshaun Watson versus Anthony Richardson. I mean, come on, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Anthony Richardson also did not pass to his running backs in college. I looked through his 2 years of game stats and it was nothing. And it's not a scheme standpoint. It's just like, it's the player. And I don't expect him to come in and be like a dump off. I mean, obviously,
why would he?
Right.
Yeah. Like, exactly. Why would he? That'd be dumb. Yeah.
Mine is, I already mentioned is DeAndre Hopkins though, just because like, where you look at the quarterback situation, that is going to be, let's just say from a, how do I say this, Hayden? How do I say this?
Just move on. Just move on. Just don't say anything.
It's a different style of quarterback he's going to be playing against for the first few weeks of the season than what he has been in the past. And I also think just Nuke in general, his play has declined. Like, I don't think he has as much explosiveness as he has in the past. And then you look at like all the other wide receivers that were drafted around him and like Drake London, Christian Watson, even like way after and Terry McLaurin. And I want to take chances on those guys ahead of DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, and here's the thing about drafting him right now. One of two things plays out. You're either drafting him now with Arizona, and then you have to go with the Kyler situation, which is just a very risky element, right? Or you're drafting him with, hey, he's going to get traded into a great situation, but where? And you don't know. And now you're not correlating. And if he gets traded, it's either going to be a midseason one, which has negative implications there because potential bye weeks, he sits out an extra week or so, like learning the offense, or he gets traded in the offseason. Now people drafting in July, August know where he's getting traded. And so now if he has a big week 17, someone who has his QB is probably going to have a leg up on you.
Yep. I agree.
Index threw out a name in there that I've been drafting way too much of, and that's Alec Pierce as well. Just like where I'm willing to take a shot on a quote unquote spike week player or someone that fits his quarterback strengths much more now than the guys he played with last year, like Alec Pierce is at the top of that list.
Matt Ryan and Anthony Richardson are night and day differences.
Even Nick Foles and Sam Ellinger, the strengths that Pierce brings to the table are the strengths of Anthony Richardson. And I will come clean. I'm taking a lot of Darren Waller at this moment because I know. And we've kind of had that conversation where he's almost in between obviously the Travis Kelce talk and then in Mark Andrews and then where we were targeting tight ends in this one. But to me, he has the pathway of an offense that probably wants to throw more and can be the quote unquote number one pass catcher on their team much more than the other tight ends that are drafted around him too.
Yeah, I think it's completely fair. And if you can get him after those other there's that wide receiver drop off, it fits in well. Like it's right at that Cortland Sutton space where we're like, Cortland Sutton, Juju Bateman. Like, I don't know if I want these, but maybe okay, I go Waller and I go Daniel Jones with my next pick. You get that stack, and you can take all the Giants later on because they're all available. You just got to hit correctly. Okay, this was amazing. Both of you, thank you for joining. Josh, what are we doing with Cincinnati backfield?
Travion season. Let's go.
No, we should have taken Travion instead of your Ty Chandler pick. That's what we should have.
You just let me know who everyone's going to draft, and I'm going to take the opposite, and we'll see what happens.
No, I'm drafting a lot of Samaje P run right now too. Okay. If you really want to go through this, as you know, I am a true sicko with these post-draft press conferences, and go back and watch all of them. And it is a really ambiguous situation because they did want to bring back Samaje Perine to fulfill that role. And we know that role is kind of clearly defined on the Bengals because they either don't want to play Joe Mixon every single down or they don't think he's great in that pass pro role. And Samaje obviously was. Just trying to read the tea leaves and decipher the quotes that they said, man, they kept bringing up Travion Williams despite just drafting Chase Brown in like round 5. And they multiple times, different points of these pressers, said that Travion, every time we've given him an opportunity, he made the best of it. He made the most of it. He showed out. And the only reason he didn't get more was because your guy, Samaje, was in front of him and Joe Mixon was in front of him. So now it's not the rookie contract he's on. They brought him back for like 1.1 million on a second deal. So probably a blind spot for me, Justin, is perceiving or trying to guess what we don't know in weeks 14, 15, 16, and 17, because I maybe focus a little bit too much on week 1, week 2, and week 3, because to me that is kind of predictable. And I would be shocked if Travion does not have that quote unquote Samaje Perine role to start the season, but he might faceplant with it, So
yeah, but if he does, it's up for grabs. Obviously there's a couple other options back there, but we really don't know. That's one of the ones that honestly I'm probably just going to wait. And I know that he's going to be at what's the highest you could see him being drafted, assuming all the press, all the news is going well, not
16.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Assuming Joe Mixon is still there. Obviously if Joe Mixon goes anything, but right. I think 16th round's probably right. Maybe 15th. And so for me at this current stage, it's not worth the risk for me wasting a 17th, 18th rounder when he literally could be game day inactive. Versus in August, that's when I'd be drafting maybe a whole bunch of him because now we have more confidence. But I love the take. I love the analysis. Your willingness to continue to dive into all these press conferences, even though, as you said in the pod with ETR, that you are not putting out an article anymore. It's just for your own personal notes. I absolutely love it.
Josh.
No writing. It takes the most time.
Yeah,
that's true. That's what
I could just say it here in 35
confirm.
seconds and everyone gets to know what I'm going to say.
Can confirm.
Speaking of 35 seconds, your guys' podcasts are not 35 seconds, but you got a bunch. Tell us what you guys have coming up. Where can people find you on the Underdog YouTube channel and podcast and everything else? Let the people know.
Tight end rankings are coming up this week. We've already done quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs, and then we've done dynasty shows as well. And then we got some other shows coming up. And I got a bunch of columns coming out as well.
Yeah. The rest of this week, we're also going to do second year wide receiver breakout. So we kind of eliminate the Garrett Wilsons and the Chris Olaves of the world because everyone knows them. But then we'll go deep into the film and the stats of the Alec Pierces of the world, the Khalil Shakurs of the world, and try to see if there's something that's actually there. And then we're also going to start a series every Wednesday where we bring on a guest and just talk through the 5 players they can't stop drafting for whatever reason. So it's fun. I'm getting married here in a couple weeks and we have a few vacations lined up, but the content keeps on rolling.
Love it. Well, touch some grass, some sand, whatever you're doing. It is summer. It is best ball season. Thank you both for joining and welcome. You all are now board of directors for the Best Ball Boardroom. You guys are always welcome. Maybe we'll bring you back later this summer when things are continuing to tick. I saw a question. Puppy 2 question mark?
I haven't heard anything about Puppy 2s. I will say maybe we'll come back on when another game format drops.
Sounds great. All right, everyone. Have a great start to your week. It is Monday. I will be back on Thursday. We've got a big mega ETR guest coming then. But to everyone else, enjoy the rest of your day and cheers.